I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, would be already be familiar with the next kind of software that I'm going to be talking about, which is the online classroom platforms, right? So this is something that virtually all instructors, right? So whether we are teaching in a college or a university, undergraduate, postgraduate, or even at the school level, right? So all of the educators have been forced to get familiar with the online platforms. So nevertheless, for the sake of completeness, I do want to highlight some aspects of the online classroom platforms. And if you have been, I don't know whether I should say you have been lucky or unlucky not to have had the opportunity to teach in an online classroom, so this is something that might be of use to you to know what kind of features that you should look forward to use in an online classroom setting. Okay, so the first thing is that we should try to use the online classroom platforms much more than just an interactive video call, right? Which means that we have to be familiar with other interactivity options. What is interactivity options? Which means that you have online learners. So we are talking about those kinds of online classes which are generally categorized as live synchronous classes. Synchronous means what? You are delivering the lecture and your learners are also logging in at the same time listening to your lecture, right? So this, you can contrast this with asynchronous mode of interaction or teaching, wherein you are recording your video and then you are posting your video online and the learners are watching it at some other time as per their convenience. So here I am referencing the live online classes, right? So when we are talking about live online classes, we should be able to do a lot more than just merely presenting a video or the slide share, right? Incidentally, this particular session, in fact all the NPTEL videos that you will be watching, they are all in asynchronous mode, right? So we do have other live sessions we might be having, but the core instruction is happening in asynchronous mode. On the other hand, if you are teaching in an online classroom in live synchronous mode, then it will be very useful and possibly important and mandatory to be familiar with the interactivity option provided by the online classroom platform. Okay? For example, most of the platforms will allow you to do live polls. How can it be useful? So you suppose you are talking about a topic, and in the middle of the topic, in order to ensure that your learners are listening to you, you suddenly pose a question. It is not really a quiz as an assessment, but you pose a question saying that, what do you think about this particular aspect of it? No? So among the three things that we just talked about, which is the most suitable one for this purpose? Things like that, right? Just to keep the levels of engagement very high. The second one is are the chat windows, right? And most of the times we are not in a position to activate the microphone of the students when we are doing a live session, right? Because it can get a bit chaotic, even if there are 20-30 people and each one raising a hand and asking a question through the microphone, it becomes extremely difficult to manage. So whenever we are trying to teach live online classes, most of the times the immediate interaction is only through the chat windows. And depending upon the size of the class, either you can choose to keep an eye on the chat window, or you can have teaching assistants who are logged in and monitoring the chat windows. Okay, so when especially when you are trying to monitor the chat windows by yourself, so you need to be familiar with the tool, how to activate the chat window, how to position it in a way that it does not interfere with your own classes and so on. So that is something that is quite useful. The third very useful thing are the whiteboards, right? So whiteboard is a special kind of a software which allows you, for example, OpenBoard is an open source whiteboarding software which can be used to annotate, to write and so on, and that can be shared online during the classes, right? So this can be quite useful if you are teaching mathematical oriented subjects wherein you don't necessarily have lots of slides, but you are trying to write some equations and so on. In fact, to be even more effective with whiteboards, you will need some specialized hardware, which I will talk about shortly. Okay, so these are some of the interactivity features of online classrooms that you may want to be familiar with. Once again, the online classroom, there are so many that are out there, including Microsoft Teams themselves have an education add-on that you can use as part of their Office 365 offering. Of course, Google has got a classroom offering and so on. Okay. The second aspect of online classes, of online classroom platforms is their ability to record your lectures. Okay. So this is something which is to keep up with the modern times, right? So what many institutions have the option of doing is to make available a recording of those online classes, the live synchronous online classes, for the students to review it after the class, maybe before the exam, in an asynchronous mode. Okay, so which means that you should be familiar with the software to be able to activate that recording, and possibly if needed to edit the recording, how to make it available and things like that, right? So that is a useful feature that most online classroom software provides, right? So this is in a nutshell. Once again, even if you are familiar with online classrooms and you're having done it in the past, but these are the additional points that you may want to keep in mind the next time you get an opportunity or the need to do online classes. The last important category of software which is important for the educators that I want to talk about is the academic ERP, right? ERP has got a slightly legacy expansion. It says that enterprise resource planning, but specifically in the academic context, it takes a lot of significance and plays an important role in every education institution. So I am not going to be going into the details of all the features of an ERP, but I will touch upon some important features which are relevant to you as an instructor, and possibly some of the student-centric features that can be activated to make your life as an instructor easier, right? So one is the most important and useful instructor-specific feature in any ERP is the ability to submit grades online. Okay, so depending upon your institution and the maturity of the information technology use, so there can be many different ways in which course instructors are required to submit their grades. But most institutions which have implemented an ERP, academic ERP, they expect course instructors to upload the grades in an online manner using the ERP. So that is very convenient for many reasons, right? So it makes the whole the time required for publishing the results, it's very fast. It becomes very fast because once all the people already upload their grades, then all the subsequent activities, including say the calculation of the cumulative grade point average or preparation of the transcript that students can download, all of that can happen very, very quickly without much manual intervention. So that is a feature that as course instructors you must be comfortable with as far as ERP is concerned. Another very useful feature which I myself use many times is the ability to go back and look at the data from my past teaching, right? So if you are using an ERP to track all the data, all the courses that you have been teaching, so it becomes a single place where the entire historic information corresponding to your own teaching within the institution is there. Now, where can that be useful? Well, that can be very useful, for example, if you are preparing a dossier for your, say, for your promotion, right? So you don't have to go back and dig back into the old Excel files or old emails and so on. So that information, right, exactly how many courses did you teach, how many students were there in the course that you taught, how many of them were core courses, how many of them were electives, right? All of this information will be there at the click of a button. Another very valuable usage of that historic information inside the ERP is to look at the past performance of my own students, right? So if there is the same course that I am teaching multiple times, then suddenly I can go back and see now how is the current batch performing relative to the last year's batch or the batch before that. So that will give you the ability to kind of track your own course as to, you know, are your students finding it easier, are they finding it more and more difficult, does this batch require any special attention. All these analytics are available once again out of the box. That's another reason why you will need it is be useful to learn how to use an academic ERP. Okay. The last part are there are lots of other optional features that are there. From an instructor point of view, many of them, we just talked about the learning management system. In many ERP, in many institutions, instead of having a separate learning management system like a Moodle, what they will do is they will implement an academic ERP which contains a built-in LMS features, right? So it doesn't matter whether you have a separate LMS or you are using an LMS which is integrated with the ERP. In either case, it's something useful that all instructors must be comfortable and familiar to use. Okay? And now let us try to understand some student-centric features. Right? From a student point of view, an academic ERP becomes a one-stop shop for them to download their transcripts, or once you are conducting the examinations, to share the timetable with them, or give them the ability to download the hall tickets without having to walk across to the office, crowding that place and so on. It's quite convenient actually. And they also contain other non-academic functions as well, such as fee payment, hostel management, help desk, request for bona fide certificates, right? So all these features can be there, which of course doesn't have anything to do directly with your role as a course instructor. And even the optional LMS features, students can interact. Suppose you are putting out an assignment, then students can upload their response to that particular assignment. Okay. And of course, finally, what I am completely skipping over are the loads of administrative functions that are there within the ERP, because of course those features have no relevance to your role as an instructor. But if some of you are also playing the role of an instructor, then feel free to explore the other features of LMS, including say hostel management, much more advanced financial management, and course feedback administration, and so many other such features. Right. So that is in a nutshell everything, all the relevant software that you as an educationist should be familiar with. Of course, my list is not been exhaustive by any stretch of imagination, but I have tried to categorize them into most important pieces of software that every educationist must be familiar with, right? And it is not even possible for me to list them exhaustively because technology is changing so rapidly, right? And I have myself been tracking the education technology over the last decade and a half, and whatever was relevant even 3 years ago is no longer relevant, or it has improved the way we do some of those things, right? So be a technology enthusiast as an educationist, be on the lookout for as to what is it that you can use to make your own activity much more efficient, make you more productive, and also makes it gives you a lot of joy, and that particular the ability to get deeper into saying that what is it that I can do to make a difference to my classroom teaching, right? So that is on that note I will close this particular topic on the software which is relevant. I will now move to the hardware aspects of the technologies that are relevant for educators. Let us now talk about hardware. Of course, the first most important hardware is the computer itself, right? It could be your desktop or it could be your laptop. So there are certain things that as an educator you have to be conscious about, right? So because the effectiveness of all the software that we talked about earlier is highly dependent upon the computer that you are using, right? When you say they're not just the specification of the computer, but how well you have managed the software that is running in the computer as well. Okay, so for one thing, for these days newer and newer software, they are all assuming that they are operating on a very powerful computer, which means that it is possible that if you have not upgraded your hardware, your computer or laptop or whatever that you are using, or say within the last 5 years, right? So probably this is the time to upgrade your computing device. So the upgradation at least has to improve 2 or 3 important things, right? So one is that of course the RAM, right? So these days we are talking about at least a minimum of 8 gigabytes of RAM, for example, right? And of course 16 GB is probably something that will make it very comfortable, because many of the tools that we talked about, software tools, they could be very memory hungry, and for sure they will also be CPU hungry as well. So which means that upgrading to the latest version of without necessarily going with any one particular brand, any of them is fine, but pick up the latest generation of that particular CPU with sufficient number of cores that are there, so that it will you will be able to carry on with that particular thing for another 5 years at least. Okay, so that is one aspect of it, which is necessary to keep up with the upgrading the hardware, the computer that you are using. Okay, now I want to talk about accessorizing your computer. Okay, what do I mean by accessorizing your computer? Which means that it will be, as an educator, in my own experience as well, it is very useful to add additional accessories which will make my experience of using that particular computer, either for teaching or for preparing my class, and everything, all of them very comfortable, by minimizing the strain and the stress, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is the concept of external monitors, right? Typically when we talk about a laptop, the laptop has got 14-inch, if you stretch it a little bit, it becomes 16-inch, but anything larger will make the laptop heavier. So people do prefer small form factor devices, right? So many of them even now carry tablets instead of computers and so on. So obviously in order to make them highly portable, they are quite small, but I am sure you will agree that they are very inconvenient for extended period of usage, right? Definitely 14-inch monitor laptops are very inconvenient. So it will be useful to purchase an external monitor, right? So the external monitors can be as large as 20-inch, right? And you will be able to connect it and exactly use it as if it is your laptop monitor, right? So that is something that will make it will reduce the strain on in your eyes, and makes it much more ergonomic for you, right? So you don't have to bend down. You can be up, you can be looking at it at the eye level, and etc., etc., right? So that is the first one. And the another accessory that more and more people are finding it useful, especially these days, irrespective of what subject you teach, usage of a computer has become inevitable, and using mouse, right? So we I don't know, in my estimate, we may end up using the mouse of a computer maybe for 4 to 5 hours in a day, right? And the remaining time we are standing in front of our students. So that is really a long time to be using the traditional mouse. So we have many special kinds of ergonomic mouse which will reduce the strain in your wrists and so on. So that is something that you can explore further, right? So they are called as ergonomic mouse. Some representational pictures I have shown in the slide. Okay, and of course along similar lines we also have the traditional keyboards, especially, which will reduce the strain in your fingers and your wrists, right? So these are ergonomic add-ons that will make your overall experience of spending extended periods of time on their computer much more pleasurable. Okay, now let me kind of switch from the pure hardware point of view to the operating system aspects of the computer that you are running, right? I am assuming a majority of you would be running the Windows operating systems, but especially those who are engineering faculty, they are likely to be using a Linux version variation of the operating system. It doesn't matter which operating system that you are using, but it is extremely critical for you to keep up with the software updates provided by the operating system, right? Because you should remember that your computer holds highly critical information, which is critical not only to you as a teacher, because it contains all your past courses, past material, past grades, everything is there. So that is of interest, and of course it is of extreme importance to your institution as well. Correct, because the institution is relying on you to hold that particular data in a safe and secure manner. So having the operating systems up to date is very useful. Okay, and so that is something. No, don't turn off automatic updates if that feature is there. If there are updates, then there must be a reason why the updates are being downloaded. Okay. And of course, one small thing about organizing information in your computer itself, try to come up with your own consistent taxonomy of how you organize the information. Okay, what I mean by consistent is that definitely you should avoid doing things in an ad hoc manner, right? So what do I mean by ad hoc manner? Suddenly you want to create a file, you want to share it something, you downloaded something, right? I have seen people a bit carelessly creating a folder on the desktop and storing it there, right? All of a sudden, suddenly after say 2 months down the line, you are looking for it, you have forgotten that it is already there in your desktop, you download it and then it occupies space. All kinds of mess can be there, and much worse can happen is, now I just now told you to upgrade your computer. So if you want to upgrade your computer, then all the old data that you want to copy, it will be scattered all over your computer, all your folders, and it becomes a nightmare for you to transfer the data from an old computer to a new one, right? So to avoid all of these things, have a very strong, consistent folder structure, right? It could include, right, so the courses that you are teaching, if you are holding some administrative roles, the exclusive directory structure holding information about that particular role that you are playing. You are a coordinator, you are a head of the department, right? So have separate folder structures which are clearly separating them, all of them under the same root, right? So what I mean by that, so it could be in the desktop itself, but there should be a single top level folder which you can copy and move it to another computer without loss of data, right? So for example, it could be the documents folder inside Microsoft Windows, no problem with that, but all the documents should be organized within that folder only. So if you have it in the document folder, you should not keep anything in the desktop folder, right? Things like that. So have your own consistent way of organizing, what we call as in the good old office days, it's called as a filing structure, right? So we used to have physical folders, not the computer folders, for files, right? So files and folders to organize, and then we used to have big cupboards, right? So the whole similar things you should try to recreate in the soft copy form inside your folder structure that you have in your computer as well. Okay, so that is something that I wanted to talk about hardware purely from a computer point of view. Okay, let me talk about the second very useful hardware component, which are digital tablets and pens. Right, all of you would have heard about this term called smart classroom, right? So what makes a classroom smart, right? So and most of the institutions are trying to come up with smart classrooms, because smart classrooms decidedly improve the learning experience and even the teaching experience in the classroom environment, right? So that is why most education institutions are investing in creating smart classrooms. So what goes into a smart classroom, right? So at the very least, you will have a projector, and you will have screens for projecting from a laptop or a computer which is there in the classroom. Okay, and these days classes are becoming larger and larger, right? So you might be teaching a classroom having 60 students at the least, right? So it is also again shown that the attention span of the students increases if they are able to hear clearly, right? So if we are, especially if you are a teacher who doesn't have a big booming voice, then you may not be able to reach to the student who is there at the last row. So these days every classroom is also having an audio infrastructure for them to be able to use a microphone, and there are speakers placed so that even the student who is farthest from where you are speaking from, they will be able to hear very clearly, which in turn enhances their attentiveness to what is going on in the class, right? So these are the bare minimum that you can expect in a smart classroom. And there are much more fancier versions of the smart classroom where they have touch devices on the board, wherein you can write directly on the board and things like that. They are all quite expensive, and in my experience a little cumbersome to use as well. But even with this infrastructure, you can create a pretty convenient and comfortable classroom environment. Now what I am going to be talking now is to take that experience to the next level. Okay, so that is possible by integrating these digital tablets and pens as part of your classroom infrastructure, right? So if that is something that is already there, as an educator, so you have to know how to make good use of that particular piece of hardware, right? So how does the typical usage in a classroom happen, right? So this is it can be very useful to the traditional the way of teaching, not traditional, right, to the modern way of teaching using slides and presentations. But this can also be useful for the traditional way of teaching, what we call as the chalk and the talk, typically followed by the mathematics professors and teachers. So this is a this is so useful. So how does it work? So in the classroom, you will have, as I said, the classrooms would already be equipped with the projector. So there will be a computer which is connected to the projector, so that whatever you are showing in your computer gets projected on the screen. Okay, so that infrastructure is assumed to be there already. After that, what you do is you take your tablet. There is a tablet device, is almost like a monitor, except that it is laid down flat. Okay, so that becomes a tablet. So it's like a normal tab, but typically slightly larger. Right. So when I say larger, it could be about 17 to 18 inches to be comfortable, but you get such tablets even in 14 to 16 inches dimensions as well. But what is more important is that that particular tablet gets connected to the computer, right? So it could be the laptop or whatever is there in the classroom already. So what happens is that, so whatever you are projecting, it gets displayed on that tablet as well as the screen. Okay. Now this is where the fun aspect starts, right? So typically these tablets also come with a digital pen. Okay. So if we talk about a digital pen, right? So this is something like a digital pen that we can write. So this is looking like a normal pen, but actually this doesn't have your normal refill and things like that, right? It's got a plastic tip using which you can write on your tablet. So where it becomes interesting is that, suppose you are projecting a slide, and it's quite boring to the students and even to you as an instructor to simply look at the slides and keep talking, especially if you are talking some technical subjects and you want to highlight something, you want to circle something, right? So if I want to do that, then what you do is you will just simply pick up the pen and you can directly write on that particular slide. So if I have to write, right, so I can pick up my pen and then circle, right? So I can do whatever I want to do. So immediately what happens is whatever we are writing immediately gets projected, right? So that is quite brilliant actually, right? So you are talking about an equation, right? And suddenly you want to provide some examples of the equation. You then say, suppose x is this and y is this and this is a calculation, right? So that can be done in real time without those things being there in the slides already, right? So this makes things extremely powerful and interactive, and allows you to make your instruction at your classroom much more livelier and interactive as well. In fact, there are occasions where you can ask students to come on and you pose a problem, ask them to solve it right there, and the entire class can see. I am saying from a classroom experience, it is no different from the chalk and talk, except that if you are, instead of using this digital pen, digital tablet and pens, if you are using the traditional blackboard, green board with chalk and writing it, so it is very likely that it is not very clearly visible to everybody. On the other hand, this solution will work no matter how big the class is, right? So I have used this in a classroom with 300 students, wherein we have connected to a single computer, we might be having 5 different screens using which the 300 people are looking at it. You are writing in only one place, but all the 5 screens are projecting it at the same time. So this is an extremely useful device, and I am talking at length about it right now because almost many institutions, in fact almost every institution, is embracing these technologies as part of their own smart classroom infrastructure. And as an instructor, once you are confronted with this kind of a device, I would like you to be ready to explore and take full advantage of these this software as well. In fact, these devices are so versatile that you don't even need a PPT to be able to use that. And I did talk about a software called Open Board, which is essentially a whiteboard software on this software. So you project that and you have a whiteboard on your table, right? So that is how powerful these devices are. So from a purely to be an digitally literate educator, it is useful to be familiar with this kind of hardware as well. Okay. And these devices can be quite useful for online classes as well, right. So the usage that I just talked about is mainly focused on the classroom experience with 3 projectors, 4 projectors and so on. But suppose we just talked about online classes, right. So if you are conducting an online class, once again this can be very powerful. Instead of merely sharing your PowerPoint slides like the way I am doing, you can also make it much more interactive, once again depending upon the subject, especially if you are an engineering faculty or a science faculty, then I am sure you will find this to be extremely useful, wherein once again instead of having a projector, you will connect this particular device directly to your laptop or your computer and use it in exactly the same way you would use it in the classroom. So when you are sharing the screen in the online classroom, the viewers of your screen will also see whatever you are writing, all the annotations that you are doing, right. So this is equally powerful, if not more powerful, in the online setup, and actually it requires much less additional infrastructure for you to be able to take advantage of these devices. Okay. So this is also something very useful that I would like you to be familiar with.